All right, let's go ahead and call the Senate to order. Sergeant at Arms will please secure the chamber doors. Members, please take your seats. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. President.
All right, Senators, this morning we are very pleased to again have with us Reverend Dr. Carrie Finch Burris of Kenwood Presbyterian Church in Baltimore, Maryland, guest of the distinguished senator from the 8th District. Please rise for the invocation.
Once again, I'd just like to say thank you for having me. I'm delighted, as always, to stand before the elected officials as y'all work, hopefully, for the good of our state, which I believe you do, and grateful once again to be sharing this space with some distinguished AKA women, and I think that's the future of farmers?
I think so.
Future farmers of America. That's some good company to be in today. So anyways, let us pray. O holy God, we give you thanks. We thank you for bringing together this group of people, our elected officials, who have committed their time and energy to the betterment of your people. We thank you for the beauty of this land we call home. We thank you for the creativity, love, and hope you give your people, Lord. And we now humbly ask that you bless these civil servants as they enter into today's work, as they consider bills and measures that impact the lives of the people of Maryland. Bless them with wisdom and courage to serve you and all the people who reside here. Bless their decisions and discussions. Bless their time and willingness to serve. May the people of this great state, all of the people, be in the forefront of their decisions. May their actions help Maryland become a safer, cleaner, and prosperous place for all who call it home. And may we, in all that we do, work towards a more peaceful world, a world filled with hope and opportunity for all. And in all that we do, may we seek to be a beacon of hope to those in need or hurting. In your name we pray, amen.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That's wonderful. Thank you. Chair recognizes the senator from the 8th District.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Dr. Carrie Finch Burris from Kenwood Presbyterian Church. And it's been a pleasure knowing you and your husband, Eric, who's over here. And they are staying a while here in Annapolis today just to see what's going on up and down the street. So I hope they have an umbrella.
That's it.
But I just want to thank you. And the coolest thing is that when you go to one of their dinners, you can always find the good pastor in the kitchen doing her southern cooking.
Ooh,
she
sounds
does
delicious.
really good food. So thank you very much for coming down.
Excellent. And without objection, we'll certainly journalize the invocation this morning. And thank you very much for your work and effort. And we'll have to get some of that southern cooking sometime soon. Wonderful. Thank you. Excellent. All right. Let's see. Has everyone recorded their presence? Almost. Senator from... Thank you. Let's see. Looks like we're good. Clerk will take the call. With 45 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland is now in session. We have several resolutions. Let's go ahead and start with the senator from the 23rd District.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I am pleased and delighted to introduce the esteemed ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated on their Day of Advocacy. There are over 500 members registered to participate in the 2024 AKA Day at the Capitol. I am very proud of my wife, Ingrid Watson, who is here today as the state coordinator for Connection and Social Action for the North Atlantic region. Led by the North Atlantic Regional Director, Alicia Pegues Spearman, I'm proud to introduce the 27th North Atlantic Regional Director, Ms. Irma Barron, accompanied by Ms. Tori Walker, President of the Delta Pi Omega Chapter, the Annapolis Chapter, and Ms. Erica Stanton, member of the Delta Pi Omega Chapter and the AKA Day Planning Committee. They are joined by several members seated in the gallery. Ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha, will you please stand? That's right, fine as wine, good as gold, first and finest for all to behold. Alpha Kappa Alpha. Sorority Incorporated is an international service organization founded on the campus of Howard University in Washington, D.C. on January 15th, 1908. It is the oldest Greek letter organization established by African American college-educated women and is comprised of more than 360,000 initiated members in graduate and undergraduate chapters. And while there are 10 members in the House, we do have one here in the Senate, and that's our very own Miss Sally Robb. Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority's mission is to cultivate and encourage high scholastic and ethical standards, to promote unity and friendship among college women, to study and help alleviate problems concerning girls and women, to improve their social stature, to maintain a progressive interest in college life, and to be of service to all mankind. Their distinctive colors are salmon pink and apple green. Mr. President, can you please read the resolution?
The clerk will read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority in recognition of your continued advocacy on statewide issues and participation in AKA Day in Annapolis. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on this 28th day of February, 2024.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. To the wonderful, wonderful ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, the Senate of Maryland unanimously celebrates your work and thanks you for what you do in Maryland every single day. Congratulations. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us today. All right, let's see. We also have another resolution today from the senator from the 42nd District, Baltimore-Carroll County.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my honor this morning to present a resolution honoring Changa Bell. Changa Bell founded the Black Male Yoga Initiative in 2015 to teach black men and boys in the community the importance of holistic health. When he was younger, Mr. Bell encountered serious health issues, and he turned to wellness and yoga in particular in order to turn his life around, and that led to his life's work to share his own means of salvation with others. He's certified by Georgetown University as a life coach and is the author of the book Affirmations for Dads, 21 Lessons in Minding Your Fatherhood. Thanks to Mr. Bell's initiative, dozens of black men attend his yoga classes in order to become yoga instructors, and he travels all around the country teaching and inspiring black men with his vision of the importance of health equity, mental well-being, and holistic health. The reason why I'm introducing Mr. Bell this morning is because he has relocated his flagship yoga studio from the 41st District in Baltimore City to Carroll County. And before we read the text of the resolution, I know the senator from the 41st District has some additional remarks to express.
All right,
Senator?
the senator yields to the senator from the 41st District.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Members of the body, it's also my great honor to have such a national and statewide treasure as Changa Bell and his wife, Devonna Bell. I just want to share that Changa Bell is and has been my personal yoga instructor, and I find him to be one of the most fascinating people I've ever met because his ideas about wellness and mitigating health issues and health disparities through yoga has been spreading across this nation. He's been recognized by People magazine, CNN, all over the world. And I believe that through, like Changa, I believe that through yoga we can change not only our lives but the entire world. So it's really an honor to have you here. Thank you.
Excellent. The clerk will read the resolution in full.
be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to Changa Bell in recognition of your dedication to promoting health and mental well-being among men of color. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on this 28th day of February 2024.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote?
Mr. President.
If so, in explaining his vote, Chair recognizes the senator from Carroll County.
Just explaining my vote, his property, I think, is like across the street from my district because of the way that someone drew the lines in some ways. So anyway, but no, I had the opportunity to meet Changa because his son and my son are in the same rec wrestling program together.
Oh, nice.
And so we had an opportunity to get to know him a little bit this year, and excited about what he's doing both in Carroll County and Baltimore and around the state. So well-deserved honor.
Wonderful. All right. Has everyone else recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. To Mr. Changa Bell, the Senate of Maryland unanimously celebrates your work and thanks you for your incredible efforts promoting health and mental well-being among men of color. Thank you very much and congratulations. Excellent. Very good. I believe we have one additional resolution from the senator from the 45th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, we are joined today by one of our great young shining stars, our young scholars, Sierra House. She's a junior at the Baltimore Design School, right in the home of the 45th District. And one of the things that we do is we can tell people what we're doing, or we can involve people in what we're doing. And I just wanted to highlight the fantastic collaboration between the Baltimore Design School and representatives from BGE. In this partnership, students were tasked with designing 3 new electric vehicle charging stations for the Johnson Square neighborhood, supported by BGE and the Mid-Atlantic Electrification Partnership promoting sustainable energy practices. We're joined by key individuals who made this possible. Thanks to Ms. Stephanie Leach, Principal Business Manager for BGE EV Programs, for her invaluable leadership, Sierra House, for the winner of the respective program. But we're also joined, and we should always remember that things are not done by themselves. So we're also joined by her grandma, Miss Oliver. We're joined by Principal Brosine from the Baltimore Design School. We're joined by her mom and dad and her siblings in the gallery, her friends and BGE Community Engagement working to support this effort.
Welcome.
Mr. President, this collaboration sets a great example of what's possible with a shared vision and commitment to make a positive difference. I'd also like to congratulate Sierra on her recent induction into the National Honor Society. Mr. President, if we could read the resolution.
The clerk will read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to Sierra House in recognition of winning the BGE Design Challenge for new EV charging stations that will enhance Maryland's infrastructure with her new greenery-themed collection. The entire membership extends its best wishes and directs this resolution be presented on the 28th day of February 2024.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? In explaining my vote, if senators pull it up on their computer, you can see on the Baltimore Design School's page the EV design. It's a really great design. Well done. So with that, has everyone recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. To Ms. Sierra House, congratulations. The Senate of Maryland unanimously celebrates your great work and wishes you the best for your future. Well done. It appears the senator from the 45th was at the ribbon cutting. This is an excellent picture there. Yes, senator from the 22nd District.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the body would help me recognize a beautiful woman, but before I do that, on this great day of AKA Day, I wanted to recognize my wife who's here today. But before I do, I wanted to just point of personal privilege. My family and I was able to visit Africa in the interim. And actually, when we went there, we went to a country called the Gambia, where my wife is from. And while we were there, we were able to meet so many different people. It was such a beautiful experience. But while I was there, I got to meet her grandmother, who was just an amazing woman. And unfortunately, at that time, she was suffering from cancer. 2 weeks later, once we got back here, our family got back, she actually passed away. My wife had to spend a week and go back to Gambia and celebrate the life of her grandmother. So on this day, in recognition of my wife, I wanted to make sure we honored her grandmother and her family back in Gambia. In honor of that, for Miss Marie Therese Yusin Yin, and her life and legacy that she left through my wife and through my daughter. Thank you, everybody. Please give a warm Senate welcome to my wife, Rohi Washington.
We're so glad you could join us, and we're so sorry for your grandmother's loss. Yeah.
Mr. President, just one more announcement. I wanted to recognize my wife's chapter as well, because I don't want to get in trouble. Psi Epsilon Omega, who represents of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and they represent Laurel, Bowie, and Greenbelt. Please recognize the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha.
Welcome, welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. Chair recognizes Senator from the 25th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. We also have today someone who's very special to District 25. And before I got into the seat, it was obviously Senator Melanie Griffith, and before me, it was my fraternity brother, Ulysses Curry. And we have on the floor with us today his wife, Miss Shirley Curry, who is a staple in District 25 and a staple in Prince George's County. So I ask that we all give her a warm Senate welcome as well.
A staple in the Senate of Maryland as well, I would have to say, right? It's, very good. Great to see you. Great to see you. Hope you're well. Very good. All right. Yes, Chair recognizes Senator from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today we are joined in the gallery by the leaders of the Boys and Girls Club of Maryland on their Advocacy Day. There are almost 90 Boys and Girls Club locations across Maryland that serve more than 35,000 youth. Their mission is to enable all young people, especially those who need it most, to reach their full potential as productive, caring, and responsible citizens. The clubs achieve this by creating safe places and caring mentorships, meeting mental health needs, bridging the workforce readiness gap, championing diversity and inclusion, and fostering greater relationships within the community and law enforcement through fun and educational programming, accessibility to all kids. So if you could just give them a round of applause.
Welcome,
Thank
welcome.
you, Mr. President.
You all are doing some great work. Really, really appreciate what you're doing. Thank you, thank you. Across the state, but 46th District too. Thank you. Yes, Chair recognizes the Chair of Finance, Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like the body to help me recognize our guests today in the gallery above the President from the Maryland chapter of the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. They're here today for their legislative day in Annapolis. NAFA Maryland members include insurance agents and advisors, financial planners, investment advisors, brokers, dealers, multi-line agents, health insurance and employee benefits specialists, and more. NAFA members are the closest to the consumer and provide products, services, and guidance that increase financial literacy in our society, protect their clients against life's inherent risks, and help hardworking Americans prepare for retirement and create financial security and prosperity so their clients can leave a legacy for future generations. Thank you for joining me and welcome them.
Welcome. Welcome to the insurance folks. Thank you. Pleasure to see you all. Chair recognizes the Majority Whip, Senator from Prince George's.
Thank you, Mr. President. Upon a personal privilege, please. I want to spend just a minute, if I could, to thank the people in the gallery who are part of the Boys and Girls Club. I want to just tell you that I had two nephews in Hagerstown, Washington County, who came through the Boys and Girls Club. And they were facing some issues there in Hagerstown. But the Boys and Girls Club took them in, prepared them, gave them the skills that they needed to be successful. And I want you all to know that they did an awesome job. I have a nephew, Arthur William Claiborne. He went to Hood College as a result of the motivation of his family, the love of his family. I want you also to know that my money went with him. But he went to Hood College, got his degree, went on to Salisbury, got his master's degree, and he is now doing a wonderful job as a successful businessman in Frederick, Maryland. The other graduated from Baltimore International College. He became a master chef at Marriott Corporation, but decided that that was not enough. So he now works for a nonprofit dealing with persons who have drug and alcohol problems. But all of this, they could not be successful. There was an absence of the father in the home. Mother was working. They had a grandmother, but they had us to wrap our arms around them. But the skills and the training and the motivation that they received was from the Boys and Girls Club. And I want to thank you from the depths of my heart for everything you did for my two beloved nephews. Thank you so much, and I love you a bushel and a peck.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you. Wonderful. All right, other introductions? Any other introductions? Chair recognizes Senator from the 35th District.
Yes, Mr. President. As was mentioned earlier, I believe we're joined by a bunch of guests that are members of the FFA. If they wouldn't mind standing and being recognized at this time, let's give them a warm Senate welcome.
Welcome. Very good. Very good. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you. Excellent. All right, any further introductions before we jump in? Yes, Senator from District 30.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, we don't pick favorites of our constituents, but I do have some folks in the gallery. The FFA chapter from Southern High School. I have the great privilege of attending just about every FFA event they invite me to, and they are true community leaders, not in the making currently, and I just want to thank them for visiting us today and ask a warm Senate welcome.
Excellent. Welcome, welcome. Appreciate everything you all do. Very good. All right, anything else? Anything else before we jump in? If not, so be considered the reading of the journal from the prior legislative day. We have some bond initiatives. This is calendar 36. Clerk will read the bond initiatives.
Number 1, Senator Mouts, Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum, Budget and Taxation. Number 2, Senator Quarterman, Boys and Girls Club of Washington County, Budget and Taxation.
Majority Leader moves so be considered the reading of the bond initiatives. They'll be referred to the Capital Budget Subcommittee. Let's go ahead and start with our layover calendar. This is calendar number 6. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 547, Senator Elfreth, Wildlife Traveling Animal Acts, Prohibition. Question is on the adoption of one committee amendment and the favorable report.
All right, questions on the one committee amendment. Chair recognizes the senator from District 7.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have a question for the floor leader.
Will the floor leader yield? Senator may proceed.
Thank you. So I know this bill, we're trying to stop this from having these acts in Maryland. But my question is about traveling. You know, let's say we have a organization that's south of Maryland. Let's say they come from North Carolina, traveling up to like New York. Does this apply to them also, traveling Maryland's roads?
I would think so. It's more like a circus. So a traveling circus that would confine specific animals, not all animals, just the animals mentioned in the bill.
No, I know, exactly. Lions and tigers. I mean, the Tiger King kind of stuff.
Right. And primates.
And primates. And what was it, clouded leopards, I think, also?
Well.
Oh, they're back in or out. Well, but anyway, my question is, I understand traveling circus, we don't want them in Maryland. But what about if you have one that's traveling through the state?
The bill doesn't specifically address that, but I'm going to assume it does apply to that as well.
Okay. So, and then what is the penalty for this if somebody is caught? Let's say we have a traveling circus that's coming up 95, they're coming through Baltimore County, they get pulled over in White Marsh.
May I defer to the bill sponsor on
Sure.
that? Thank you.
The yields to the bill sponsor.
Senator, I apologize. I don't have the bill in front of me, but I believe we are on with committee counsel. So,
The prohibition is on the performance.
Okay.
Right.
So we're okay if, again, somebody's traveling through the state. What I'm looking at is, let's say they capture somebody that they've got a couple tigers. What do we do with them? You know, I know Baltimore County Animal Control can't take them. So it's just the performance, so they can't set up at a site and do it within the state. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Question remains on the committee amendment. Any further discussion? Any objections to the committee amendment? Without objection, the committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments? Chair recognizes the bill sponsor has an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've spoken with the floor leader. One of the committee amendments, I think inadvertently took out clouded leopards.
Well, Senator, just give us 1 second. If we could collect and distribute pages, we'll collect and distribute the senator's amendment.
Thank you.
If it were a Clydesdale, you know. He missed it. He missed it. Was too focused on justifying the exclusion.
I was hoping to move this amendment yesterday during Animal Print Tuesday, but.
All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. So as I mentioned, one of the committee amendments exempted clouded leopards for the sake of educational purposes. We've since spoken with the AZA, which is the lead organization representing accredited zoos and aquariums. They are uncomfortable with that for the very same reasons we put the bill together in the first place, which is it's still a large cat that still has some potentially dangerous tendencies for children in particular, and so the amendment simply removes that exemption and makes sure all large cats are prohibited for the purposes of traveling performances.
Thank you for.
Let's check with the floor leader.
Thank you for offering this friendly amendment. We accept it.
All right, committee sees a friendly amendment. Are there any objections to the amendment? Any objections to the amendment? Chair recognizes the senator from District 7 on the amendment.
Thank you. Just a question.
Question for the
And I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. I know we dealt with primates. We just kind of did an umbrella for them.
Yes.
Are we going to do an umbrella for large cats? Are we going to specifically call them out? Leopard, tiger, jaguar?
So the committee amendment that the floor amendment will be reversing would have called out clouded leopards. Instead, all big cats will be treated the same.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how what that classifies for big cats. Okay. I mean, I'm being serious. Like, you know, I know we have, would a bobcat fall into that? Do we know?
A bobcat, we believe a bobcat would fall into that category, yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. All right. On the amendment, any objections to the floor amendment? If not, the amendment is accepted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 547 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, let's go to labor calendar number 7. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 916, Senator Brooks, Fish and Wildlife, Endangered and Threatened Species, Definitions, Petitions, and Regulations. Question is on the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable report.
Animal Day today. All right, any on the amendment, committee amendment, any discussion? Any objections to the committee amendment? Without objection, the committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Chair recognizes the minority leader on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the floor leader would mind yielding
Will
for
yield. Pierce, Senator may proceed.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Could you just again go over what this bill is about and why it's necessary?
All right, well, it was well, the bill codifies the way in which the Department of Natural Resources identifies, reviews endangered and threatened species, and it primarily, it modifies the endangered species of fish due to the Fish Conservation Act, and it requires that a petition proposing to remove any of these be offered, removing any of these animals from the endangered species list. A petition has to be submitted.
Okay, so, right, it deals with fish and with wildlife. So just with respect to the fish, is this a new definition that calls a fish to mean a fin fish, crustaceans, mollusks, invertebrates, amphibians, and reptiles that spend the majority of their life cycle in the water? Is that new language, or has that been here before when we talk about threatened and endangered species?
Oh yeah, it just the DNR wanted to go into greater detail about identifying the different types of mollusk and whatever.
Okay, and then it goes further to say a fish includes any part, egg, offspring, product, or dead body of any fish. Do you know what dead body of any fish means?
Well, that would be any that would be dead, no longer with us. But the part, you know, let's put it this way: a fish that has demised.
Right, but are we then saying that demised fish could be part of the threatened and endangered species list? I mean, what we're doing is defining what can be included in the threatened and endangered species list, right?
That is correct, yes.
Or potentially taken off. There's the petition process to either add
to or take off.
Or
yes.
take off. So I'm concerned in why we are talking about a dead body of any fish being important enough to spell out in here if we're talking about things that are threatened or endangered. Let me ask it more specifically. Do you
Yes.
think that the dead body of any fish would refer to an oyster shell?
Senator, 1 second. If the Sergeant could please secure the chamber, please make sure that we have the doors. Thank you, Senator. Senator may proceed.
Do you believe that the dead body of any fish would refer to an oyster shell?
I would think so, yeah. Yes, because this is part of, it would be part of the crustacean that they're trying to identify, so yes.
So under this new bill then, which now has the ability for a person to petition to the Secretary about conducting a review and getting potentially an oyster shell put on the threatened and endangered species list, is that possible under this bill?
I'm not quite sure I understand what you're trying to say. Would you repeat that, Senator?
Again, the other main part of the bill goes into a lot of detail about what an interested person would have to do to petition the Secretary to put a fish or the definition of a fish on the threatened and endangered species list. My concern is, when we talked about the dead body of a fish, my concern is, could that be considered an oyster shell? And thus, could a person or an advocacy group then petition the Secretary to look at an oyster shell as a threatened and endangered species?
I would think not. They're just using the oyster, that's just for identification purposes. So if the oyster shell would be a part of the oyster, and if that's being used for identification purposes, then yes, it would.
Yes, it would. You think that a person could petition the Secretary to study and review an oyster shell, and then have the Secretary determine if that should be an endangered species?
The oyster shell would not be I don't think the oyster shell would be an endangered species, no.
Okay,
Yes.
that's what I'm concerned about,
Yeah.
and that's again why I asked what the dead body of any fish was, because I wasn't sure if somebody might determine that was an oyster shell, a part of what was the oyster and is now potentially not being utilized by that oyster anymore. Okay, so you don't think that this would include oyster shells at all. The Chesapeake Bay Foundation put in a letter of support. Do you describe, or you recall what their support was on this bill and why they were at the table for this?
Hold on 1 sec. Okay. Do they have, okay. Okay. We'll hold for a sec.
Okay, thanks.
Could you go to your next question? We're waiting on a response on that one.
That's fine.
Okay.
I'm reading the testimony. I just want to confirm that they did not mention oysters in their testimony in favor of the bill, or I guess they might have played some role in drafting or participating in drafting the bill or helping with the bill. I just want to make sure that they did not specifically bring up oysters, and again, that you feel that under the definition of fish, that an oyster shell would not be included as something that the secretary would be able to evaluate and potentially put on an endangered species list. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, sure.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, on the amended report, any further discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 916 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's go to layover calendar number 8. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 298, Chair, Education and the Environment Committee, State Board of Electricians, licensing penalties, questions on the adoption of the committee amendments, and the favorable report.
All right, questions on the two committee amendments. Two committee amendments on the amendment. Any discussion on the amendments? All right, if not, any objection to the committee amendments? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Discussion on the report. Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a couple questions for the...
Questions for the floor leader on the committee report. It appears the floor leader will yield. Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Real quickly, I just wanted to clarify, and I appreciate the time to go through the bill as amended to better understand how this works. It's my understanding currently the fines that are issued to electricians by local electrical boards are for electricians that are doing work that have not been licensed. Is that correct?
My understanding is that the locals have disciplinary action, but it varies locality by locality.
And the provisions provided in this legislation that would authorize these fines and penalties up to, is it $5,000 or $10,000?
$5,000.
Up to $5,000. Those penalties necessarily do not currently exist with the local boards. Is that correct?
The $5,000 in the bill applies to state only. The local stuff is handled at the local level.
And that was my understanding. So what we're doing is adding on to that centralized licensing and categorizing different things that can be fined that may not be currently fined by local boards. And that's the essence.
That is correct.
Right. Thank you. We don't have any amendments. I just wanted to make sure I understood what the impact of the legislation was.
Thank you very much.
All right. Question remains on the adoption of the favorable report as amended. Any further discussion on the report? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 298 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's go to layover bill number 9. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 183, Senator Bailey, State Procurement, Prompt Payment of Suppliers. Questions on the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable report.
All right. Question is on the two committee amendments. Two committee amendments. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 183 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's go to judicial proceedings. This is report number 9. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 36, Senator Benson, Maryland Deaths in Custody Oversight Board, favorable with two amendments.
Recognize the senator from the 34th District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 36, as amended, this bill requires the Department of State Police to report publicly and to the General Assembly on investigations the department completes of suspected homicides of incarcerated individuals in the custody of the Division of Corrections. The bill had two amendments. One was technical, and one struck the bill in its entirety and drafted as a substitute the requirement for the department to report on its investigations. I would move the amendments and the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 36 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 125, Senator Lewis Young, residential property sales, contract disclosures, Superfund sites, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the committee chair is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, the bill adds a requirement that a purchaser of a residential real property be provided with a buyer notice containing the following: an advisement that the purchaser can access the EPA's website to find out about the Superfund waste sites and determine if the property that they are purchasing is near a Superfund waste site, and an advisement that the purchaser may rescind that contract within 5 days after receipt of the notice if the notice is received after entering into the contract. The purchaser that receives this notice before entering into the contract may not rescind the contract based on the information discovered as a result of that notice, and a purchaser that does not receive the notice as required before entering into the contract may rescind the contract at any time prior to receiving the notice, but not later than 5 days. There were 2 committee amendments. The second amendment is the one I just read, which struck the bill in its entirety and replaced it with the language that I just read out into the record. And then amendment number 1 adds title changes to the, it's technical, adds title changes to the purpose paragraph. Mr. President, I'd move for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Yes, Chair recognizes the senator from District 3.
Yes, I wondered if you'd be willing to hold this for what I think should be a friendly amendment.
All right, let's show, the senator moves to special order the bill to the appropriate time tomorrow.
That's fine, yep.
No objections from the committee. Any objections from the floor? Without objection, the bill will be special ordered to the
Just for the
appropriate
edification
time
of the committee, it's, I believe the amendment is just the correction to the website that we referenced.
Very good. Excellent. Okay, great. So we will take it up tomorrow. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 162, Senator Waldstreicher, landlord and tenant termination of residential lease, limitation of liability for rent, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the committee is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, this bill creates parity between physical illnesses and mental illnesses when it comes to the termination of residential leases. There are 2 amendments. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 deletes certain definitions, narrows the list of professionals who are able to certify that the individual qualifies, and adds language describing how a mental disorder would qualify an individual for a limitation of rent liability. Mr. President, I move the 2 amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 162 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 354, Senator Waldstreicher, Montgomery County and Prince George's County Rent Court Workforce Solutions Pilot Program, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is a pilot program in Montgomery County and Prince George's County to allow our Workforce Development Agency access to our courts to assist those who are unable to pay their rent. There are 2 committee amendments. Amendment number 1 alters the purpose of the pilot program to include apprenticeships, with thanks to my neighbor here. Amendment number 2 changes the bill from a shall to a may. Mr. President, I move the 2 amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objections, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 354 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 391, Senator Kelly, criminal law, sexual extortion, stalking, revenge porn, statute of limitations, and in-bank review, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, this legislation changes the statute of limitations for 3 misdemeanors. Sexual extortion would become 5 years, stalking would become 10 years, and revenge pornography would have no statute of limitations, as 38 other misdemeanors also do. With the amendments, the first amendment is technical and adds the sponsors of adds as co-sponsors all of the committee members present, and the second establishes those statutes of limitation. Move for the adoption of the amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, Chair, any discussion on the committee amendments? Without any objections to the committee amendments? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Chair recognizes the senator from District 30 on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a question for the floor leader.
Floor leader,
Changa.
will you yield?
Yes.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you, and I'm sorry, I'm not an attorney, so I just want to make sure I heard correctly. Did I hear that currently revenge porn is a misdemeanor in the state of Maryland?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President.
All right. On the report, any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any objections to the amended report? Without objection, the favorable report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 391 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 397, Senator Folden, Vehicle Laws, Military Vehicles, Registration and Operation.
Recognize the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. SB 397, this bill establishes standards and procedures for the registration of military vehicle as defined in the bill. The bill requires all vehicles that meet these criteria to be registered as a Class MV-C military vehicle collector's vehicle and establishes a one-time $51 registration fee. This very uncontroversial bill had no committee amendments. Mr. President, I would move the bill in the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 397 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 442, Senator Bidel, Street Racing, Exhibition Driving, Prohibited Acts, Enforcement and Penalties, favorable with 4 amendments.
Recognize the senator from District 4 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 442, as amended, this bill increases penalties and points assessments for violations related to the participation in racing or speed contests. The bill also establishes a statewide prohibition on exhibition driving on any highway or private property that is used for drivers by the general public and modifies a similar prohibition that applies only in Worcester County. There are 4 committee amendments. Amendment 1 adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 is technical. Amendment number 3 modifies elements of the new statewide prohibition. And Amendment 4 removes from the bill a defense being added for the prohibition that only applies in Worcester County. Mr. President, I move the adoption of the amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 4 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Any discussion on the amendments? Yes, Chair recognizes the senator from the 30th District on the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I could just ask the bill
Will the floor leader
sponsor,
yield?
just for
The floor leader or the?
will the floor leader yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator
Thank
may
you.
proceed.
Just
Yes,
a quick question, just for the record. I know that the town of Ocean City and Worcester County worked with the Senate sponsor on the legislation, and just the clarification on the amendments that pertain to Worcester County.
Yeah, the amendment pertaining to Worcester County it allows them to continue the enforcement strategies and the law that they currently enforce under. This would not affect their continued efforts any way whatsoever.
Okay, thank you very much, and I thank the bill sponsor.
All right, wonderful. All right, on the amendments, any further discussion? Any objections? Without objections, the 4 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 442 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 774, Senator Ferguson, Public Safety Maryland Entertainment District Security Grant Program, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognize the chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, this bill establishes the Maryland Entertainment District Security Grant Fund to assist community organizations, nonprofit entities, and local governments to fund security operations during times of high pedestrian traffic in certain entertainment districts from which higher than average number of police reports are called into. Number two, the Maryland Entertainment District Grant Fund is a special fund and will be administered by GOCAP, the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy, to provide funding for the grants awarded under this program. And beginning in fiscal 2026, the Governor may annually appropriate up to $10 million to the fund. Mr. President, there are two committee amendments. One adds sponsors to the bill. Amendment number 2 alters the definition of entertainment districts to include areas with a high density of establishments that are in hookah bars, that have hookah bars present. Mr. President, I'd move for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 774 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's go to Special Order Calendar number 25. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 119, Senator Lamb, Legally Protected Health Care, Gender Affirming Treatment. Bill is on second reading and open to amendment.
All right, the bill is on second reading. Are there any amendments? Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would wonder if the floor leader would yield for some questions.
We don't. Do we have an amendment? Do we have an amendment by which? Is there? Let's get an amendment on the floor. We have not. Technically, we only have the bill generally in front of us, but if we have an amendment, if we could get an amendment on, and then we can debate on the amendment, does that? If we could, that would be a bit more in order.
Yes, Mr. President, I have an amendment.
Okay, Senator has the amendment. Let's collect and distribute the amendment.
Mr. President, we didn't. Mr. President,
Sure, please.
Yeah.
Sir.
We didn't adopt the committee favorable report yesterday, did we?
We did.
Okay.
We did,
Okay.
which was.
We did.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we got to it a bit late and was where it was. Certainly. Yes. All right. Let's see. Do we have it up? Hold it. Give us just a moment.
You know.
All right. Senator may explain the amendment.
Speaking of the amendment, Mr. President, I just want to go back to an article from the healthcare article, which gender affirming treatment. And Mr. President, it's very specific. It talks about the different type of a treatment, hormone therapy, hair removal, voice or voice therapy, breast, trunk, buttocks, face, neck, genitals, laser treatment. It also goes to talk about specific type of medications and supplies. And these type of treatment or medical supplies or services, to me, is not something that I believe should be given to minors. So this amendment speaks to that. And this amendment specifically goes to adults and adults only and eliminates the minors, Mr. President. And I believe this covers this very well, that knowing that if a minor had this opportunity, it would literally totally destroy them at a young age, and they would be regret in that. But with an adult and their consent as an adult, they would have the approval in this sense. So, Mr. President, I hope that we can move this amendment, and thank you very much.
All right. The senator moves the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader, and then I believe there may be some debate here. So let's, from the floor leader on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the maker of the amendment sharing that ahead of time. But I think it's important for the body just to step back for a second. This bill is not a deliberation of gender affirming care. This is really just to offer protections for parts of the medical record to ensure that patients have privacy over their medical records from being shipped out of state or being requested from out-of-state entities. And so the vast majority of the procedures that my good colleague had cited aren't really for kids. And this doesn't change the fact that any minors that are undergoing gender-affirming care still need adult consent. They still need parental consent. There is minor consent already required in the law. And so if minors are involved, this bill ensures that the parents have the same legal protections for any kids, any minors that have parental consent to undergo any care that they need. And so this amendment would reduce the rights for those parents who have consented to whatever care the child minor needs. And so I think it's important to point out that the care that the General Assembly says is legally protected is already safeguarded in the law, and that we should not be giving less protections to families where the parent already consents to any care that the child receives.
All right. Senator from the 35th District on the amendment.
Mr. President, yes, I'd like to speak in favor of the amendment.
Senator, may proceed.
And I apologize for I should have asked some questions for floor leader, I guess, yesterday, but instead I'll just kind of give my support for the amendment, the reasons, and then if there's something on the record that needs corrected, we'll be glad to hear it. So the reason I really kind of looked at this, and I think the amendment would address it, I was looking at testimony from one of the counties that I represent that said supporting the rights of parents in the medical care of a minor is of utmost importance to all our citizens, and this bill will have an adverse impact on those rights. So with that being said, we got to look into it a little more, and it's my understanding that this is really dealing with out-of-state coming in. It's my understanding that there's no states that have any kind of limitations on gender-affirming treatment for adults. So by definition, then, this would make this bill pertain to minors. I believe this amendment would address any kind of concerns because it would clearly state that it's for adults 18 and over. Different services that are covered, I'm assuming to be counseling, medication for things such as depression, and probably also surgical procedures. So that brings up questions about such things for minors like puberty blockers for children, hormone therapy, and those sorts of concerns that I have. So I just have a concern with irreversible procedures for our children. I mean, we've heard in floor debates here in past years that, we heard from former chair of Finance Committee that brains aren't fully developed till somebody's 25 years old. So I just have a concern that, we could be going down a path where there'd be an irreversible procedure, and then there'd be, for lack of a better term, a buyer's remorse, and it's too late once it gets to a certain point. Children are going through a lot of changes in those pubescent years. There's a lot of things going on there. So I just want to make sure that our children are adequately protected, especially with the out-of-state element. I don't want to see the state of Maryland be where they're coming in from other states because something's not allowed for minors in a state they're coming from. And once again, I just wanted to reemphasize, I don't know of any state in the union that does not allow treatments for adults. This all comes down to what treatments could be done on minor children, and I believe this amendment would clearly state that this just pertains to adults, and that's why I'd like to see this amendment approved, and would love, if possible, to have a roll call on this amendment.
All right, thank you, Senator. On the, let's say, are there any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak? If not, we'll hear from the floor leader on the amendment.
Sure, thank you, Mr. President. Would like to again emphasize that this bill is not a re-litigation of the debate that we had previously to allow the state to have gender-affirming care, and this is really just making sure that any gender-affirming care that's in the medical records are protected to allow patients to have privacy over their own records. You'll recall last year that there was legislation to add abortion care as legally protected care. And this simply adds gender-affirming care, similar to abortion care, as legally protected care. To my good colleagues' points, there are states that have banned gender-affirming care for adults. Ohio has, through an executive order, banned gender-affirming care for adults. Georgia also has prohibited gender-affirming care for adults. Again, this bill does not change anything about minor consent that's still required from parents for any minors that are undergoing any medical procedures. And so the amendment really undermines parents' rights to consent for the care that their children or any minors might receive. And particularly when that care is legal in Maryland, just like abortion care, which is legal in Maryland, this care is also legal in Maryland. We want to protect those medical records from being taken out of state or being requested by out-of-state entities, and that's what this bill does. This amendment would undermine those parental rights to allow parents to consent for the care of their children.
All right. Any senators who have not yet spoken wish to speak? If not, we'll hear from the senator from the 35th District on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the bill sponsor and floor leader for clarifying some of those things that, once again, it was a day late getting the question, so I appreciate those answers. Still have concerns with the bill and these irreversible procedures. When you have children coming from other states, I just wonder where the legal scrutiny is on that. Like if someone comes from another state and say there's a dispute about custody, or a minor comes here and portrays that they are trying to be emancipated, it seems to me that this bill would shut down any inquiries into that by the authorities. So that's another concern. I believe the amendment would address that concern as well. And once again, I encourage the body to accept this amendment. Thank you.
All right. On the amendment, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 28 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Are there further amendments to the bill or its title? Further amendments? If not, Senate Bill 119 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's go to Special Order Calendar number 26. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 524, Senator M. Washington, General Assembly, Committee Chairs and Vice Chairs, Gender Neutral Language. Question is on the adoption of the favorable report.
All right, question is on the favorable report, Senate Bill 524. Chair recognizes Senator from District 7.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have a quick question for
the floor leader. Senator may proceed.
So yesterday, I asked a couple questions. I understand we can't call him chairperson because of the cost of ink. But, I guess my question is, if you could tell us again, why are we doing this?
Yeah, thank you. Mr. President, in my effort to introduce some levity into a long day, the reason that we use chair is that it's actually consistent with both the original 1915 version of Robert's Rules, which is the general parameters of this body, as well as the updated 2022 provisions, that it is the position, in other words, it's the chairs that we're sitting in, it's not the individual. So to make sure that our law books are both gender neutral, not assuming that these positions are held by chairmen, it also has the result of actually being the correct form when you're talking about a chair. It is the person, or it is the authority comes from that seat, not the individual person. There is occasionally a reference to chairperson, but that is not used. It's only used under the 1914 version of Robert's Rules and the 2022 versions of Robert's Rules around the customs of formality. That's actually on page 20 to 22 of Robert's Rules of Orders, the 12th edition, that they are followed in order to maintain a position of impartiality. So it's not simply about, gender politics, et cetera. It's actually bringing our usage in alliance with our with Robert's Rules of Order. So, okay. Mr. President, that's the reason that, so it would actually be incorrect to refer to a chair of a committee, the permanent chair of a committee, as a chairperson.
Okay, so I guess let me ask this last question. So now that this is going to change, when somebody comes to committee, they sit down to testify, they always, open with a very polite, thank you. How do they now refer to this person?
Well, as you always do, chair,
Okay.
permission to use a senator's name,
Well,
Chair
no, we don't
Feldman,
have to do
Chair.
that.
I mean, you
We don't have to.
understand.
I understand, but I guess I hear all the time, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That is appropriate, actually. Again, it's
So
interesting
now
you
it's
raised that.
like we're
yeah.
taking the gender from behind chair and putting it in front of the chair. That it's okay to identify as the gender.
But sir,
Yep.
I don't think you'll find that instruction in Maryland law. So what an individual does in terms of their preference for being referred to as Madam Chair or, the chair, that is not in our law. This is about what is the law of Maryland. And in the law of Maryland, I would think, Mr. President, that the body would agree that the appropriate terminology should be reflected in Maryland law.
Okay. That's all I got, Mr. President. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Question remains on the favorable report. Any discussion? Any objections?
Mr. President.
Yes, Chair recognizes Senator from District 6.
I just have one more question. if
Question
you could,
for the
please.
floor leader on the report. Senator may proceed.
Thank you very much. So we're not making this an option. We're just saying this is how it's going to be, even though if an individual would say, I am chairperson, whatever, in that position. So we're just directly going to say, we're not going to say that. We're just going to say this is how it's going to be?
Mr. President, this law does not repeal, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. Individuals free to choose to refer to themselves any way they wish. This is about the law of Maryland and codifying positions in state government. Again, as I say, according to the guiding principles under Robert's Rules, which is how this body operates.
Just to clarify, we do not use Robert rules.
I'm sorry, parliamentary procedure broadly, sir. We use our version. Yes, got it.
And if I could, Mr. President, as you are the chair of this and the president of this Senate, and in respect of that, whoever is the person in position of a chair is in respect because they've earned that. And all I'm saying is this: if a person would like to be called in place of chair, whatever they are in position, that in respect, I would do that in respect of them asking me to do that. That's all I'm saying, Mr. President. So to put something out there and say you shall do this, to me, is going against the grain of those that earn position that would like to be called that position as chair. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. All right, on the report, any further discussion?
Mr. President.
Any further discussion? Yes, Chair recognizes Senator from the 14th District.
With the floor leader, you're for a quick question.
Floor to yield. Senator may proceed.
Certainly.
So my understanding is this bill just keeps us consistent with what current practice is. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
and yes.
So I would ask for adoption of the favorable committee report.
Thank you.
On the report, any further discussion? If not, any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the... Nope. All right. We've got the report. Any amendments? Any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 524 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's do, if we could ring the bell, or we... let's check in with the chair quickly.
End of the calendar, right?
End of the, almost at the end.
Okay.
Well, we have one left. Almost. Let's do, if we could ring the bells, do we have everybody here, and do a quick quorum call? We have one third reader.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 47 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. We have third reading calendar number 27. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 864, Senator King, Universities at Shady Grove Regional Higher Education Center, designation as Community of Innovation. Bill is on third reading.
This was special order from yesterday. So, all right, Senate Bill 864 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 864, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President, for a vote change on Senate Bill 119 from E to nay.
E to nay. Is this the amendment?
This is the amendment.
No?
This is
Okay,
the
excellent.
amendment.
If we could get to the page, and then we'll make sure that the secretary has the form.
I just want to point out, Mr. President, 18 years. That's the first time I've done that.
Oh, and it was recorded on a piece of paper.
18 years.
Are there any objections? Any objections? Yeah. Without objection, the vote is approved, changed. First of her 18 years. All right. Every streak must die. Every streak must die at some point. All right, let's see. We're going to go to committees. Just a quick note before we jump into committees as we're kind of hitting that point in session. Had the chance to sort of dive in and out of a number of committees yesterday, watching the hearings, and everyone is doing, this is a tough time. It is really, everyone's backed up. Just want to make an extra special note around airtime and bill and questions in hearings. A lot of times there can be questions that feel very, very important in the moment, but at the end of the day are not going to necessarily move the issue forward or back. And so as we are trying to continue to really be mindful of time, just remember when you're asking a question of a bill hearing, is it absolutely necessary to move? To ask that question in order to get something critical out. And so, look, we are a debating body. We just deliberate and debate intentionally, but time is going to be really tight over these next 2 weeks. And just remember that when you're asking a question, all of your other colleagues are looking at you. And so if it is going longer than you anticipate, I can guarantee you that your colleagues are thinking it's going too long. So just keep that in mind. That does not mean don't ask questions. That is not the advice. But please just really think over these next 2 weeks when everyone's feeling a little bit more anxious to really be thoughtful about airtime and just whether or not it's critical. So with that, yes, Senator from the 35th District.
Mr. President, if I may,
Please.
thank you. I know our committee was in till after 8 o'clock last night, and I would just wonder, as a leader of this body, if we could possibly look at some more limitations on the amounts of bills that can be introduced, because I don't know how many we're at now, but my personal thought is, you hit a critical mass where you get too many, and then we're not able to spend the time on the really important things. So if that's something that we could look at, a rule change potentially to lower the limit of bill submissions would.
Look, we are going to take a look this interim at a number of different processes. We added the bill change or the bill limit 2 years ago, and I think it actually caused the increase in bills. So, this is one of those ones where you think you're doing something that's going to have an impact, and it may have had an unintended consequences of all of a sudden 25 became aspirational, not the top. So it became a floor. So, look, everybody's doing the best they can, right? Everybody has their constituents, everyone has issues. But just, to do our best work, we have to be able to have the time to spend on amending and really asking questions inside voting sessions. And so it's tough to do that when all afternoons are kind of filled by hearings. So we'll figure out stuff. We're going to take a deep dive this interim, taking a look at kind of procedures. We may reach out to the Eagleton Institute up at Rutgers or one of our Maryland institutions to help us think through some ideas about how we can improve our process and efficiency. But it becomes important as the work just gets more and more complicated. So it's complex issues. We're not dealing with the easy, low-hanging stuff anymore. It's intense stuff. So let's check in with the Chair of Finance. And everyone's doing a great job. Let me be very clear. It's a lot of big issues. So everyone's doing a great job. We're moving along well.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Finance will meet at 1 o'clock today. We have 8 bills with 74 witnesses, followed by voting on the alcohol bills.
Wonderful. Excellent. Chair of Education, Energy, and the Environment.
Mr. President, I should note yesterday the Triple E Committee did set a new Triple E record, 156 witnesses. Today at 1 o'clock, we will follow with a new record on bill hearings at 24 bills today, starting at 1 p.m. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes. All right, Triple E, working hard. Budget and tax.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was going to announce my numbers, but now I'm embarrassed. So I won't. We've got a lot going on today, though. Starting at 1 o'clock, we have bill hearings.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yes, judicial proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll have bill hearings at 1 o'clock.
1
15
o'clock.
bills.
Excellent. All right, let's see, other additional standing committees? Standing committees? Do we have rules today? Chair of the Rules Committee?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The Rules Committee will be meeting right after session in the red room. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Rules Committee after session. Any additional joint committees, select committees, delegations? Yes, Chair of the Prince George's County.
Baltimore, maybe.
Just expanding your jurisdiction.
I appreciate that, Mr. President. Prince George's meets today at 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock for Prince George's. All right. Any other delegations? Caucuses? Any other announcements for the good of the order? If not, let's do a quorum call before we adjourn.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 47 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate of Maryland stand adjourned until Thursday, February 29th at 10 a.m.
10 a.m. Without objection, so ordered. Have a wonderful day, everyone. See you tomorrow.